Okay, and here we go, guys. Welcome to the channel, and it's my pleasure to be talking here with Jim Cobb, a legendary author in the prepper community. How many books have you written? You have so many, man.
I think there are about 12 out there right now. There are a
Okay,
couple more on the way that are under contract, but I think there are an even dozen on the shelves right now.
that's awesome. Cool. That's great. Well, we were just talking about this before going live that we've known of each other for many years, but never actually got to do this, which is very nice.
It is. It is. It's one of those things. I'd see your name all the time. You'd see my name all the
Yeah.
time. We just never had an opportunity to connect.
Yeah, and it's wild because it is not a big community. It's just a
No.
handful of us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that we're doing this. I noticed in one of your Facebook posts you commented on AI books that are showing up, and they're weird. It's like a coffee machine manual of some
Yeah.
kind. Doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense, but
It's very frustrating for those of us who
actually work.
spend the time and the effort to put out quality content, and then you have people who
Yeah,
they just puke out these AI generated books. And I can easily see how a consumer,
would be
how a
tricked,
reader would
right?
latch onto them.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
very
yeah,
eye catching, they got great covers and
yeah.
everything.
True.
But at the same time, if the cover says 50 books in one and the book's 112 pages, how long are these 50 books?
Kind of short. And when you read, because I'm using AI quite a bit for the YouTube stuff, especially,
Hmm.
not writing my books with AI. It's think
Right.
damn creepy, but for YouTube stuff, I see it, and one of the things I've noticed is it basically crawls through the internet and just steals from a bunch of different places, often things that are not actually true. Because, for
Hmm.
example, if I look at some things, things that I do know kind of pretty well, which I'm not an expert on anything, but let's say steel, right? Which
Yeah.
steel, this steel compared to this, what's the difference between N680 and N690? AI will see a bunch of crap that has
Yep.
makes no sense. It will not even find the tech data from the manufacturer. It will just
Hmm.
steal from some website, some bullshit that someone else
Yep.
wrote, which I know is wrong. But that's why I don't know. Anyway, it's the way things are going.
Yep. Yep.
So strange. Uh, how did you get started in preparedness? How was your journey through all of this?
I started with this stuff when I was very young. Um, I grew up in the upper Midwest of the United States, lots of tornadoes, lots of severe winter storms, things like that.
Yeah,
So as I was growing up, it was just a matter of course that, you had certain things in your car. You had jumper cables, you had blankets in
yeah,
case you got stranded, things like that. And it just, from a very early age, it just made common sense to me to be better prepared for whatever life wants to throw your way.
hmm.
So if there was a tornado warning, I was the one, 9 years old. I'm getting everything together to take down in the basement for everybody.
Yeah,
Now, granted, those supplies weren't what I would grab today. I mean,
hmm.
at 9 years old, it's,
Yeah, yeah.
stuffed
Of course.
animal and things like that. But the thought process was there.
Yeah.
And then, I got into Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts for a while, puttered around with that a little bit, and just kind of kept progressing from there. I grew up in the height of the Cold War,
Right.
where this omnipresent threat of nuclear annihilation was just
Mm.
part of the daily routine,
Yeah.
you know. So not only am I pursuing, at the time, not only am I pursuing outdoor knowledge, how to build a fire and
Yeah.
how to use knives in the woods and all that, but at the same time, I'm deeply interested in what do we do if, at the time the USSR were to launch against us? How do
Right.
we
Right.
prepare for that kind of thing? And if you weren't there, it's difficult to describe just how pervasive this was in our culture at the time. I mean, it was all over books and movies and television and, the duck and cover drills in school, things like that. And I became really deeply interested in what at the time was called men's adventure fiction. Things like The Survivalist by Jerry Ahern and The Traveler by D.B. Drum, all these, Mad Max type
Yeah.
things. I loved it. I ate that stuff up. So that kind of also filtered in with
Yes.
my overall preparedness. I want to know, okay, I know that this is fake. I know this is just a story,
Yeah.
but what's the real life counterpart to this?
Yeah.
And it just kind of kept snowballing from there.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I guess I've had a similar experience as well growing up, and I was just we were watching Indiana Jones with my youngest son for the first time, and we're talking with my wife how men, even in movies, are not portrayed like that anymore. I mean,
No.
Harrison Ford was handsome. He was skillful. He got things done. He resolved
Mhm.
problems. He knew how to fight. He was an intellectual. Now men are like goofy clowns and shown, saved by some Charlize Theron 50, 80-pound
Yeah.
woman that kicks ass and is always
Mhm.
stronger than them. But it's crazy how things have changed. I mean, we would love that the Indiana Jones, the idea of advent, as you said, the Mad Max movie. It's not real, but it's still this rugged dude that is
Mhm.
super resourceful and saves the day, right?
Right. But keep in mind, Indiana Jones wasn't perfect.
No,
He
right?
made mistakes.
Mm,
He got hurt,
yeah,
you know, and there was a very human element to
yeah,
that character on
yeah.
top
True, true.
of all the outlandish things that he did.
Yeah,
He was very grounded in reality in that, he didn't do everything right all the time,
yeah,
you know? And I think that's one of the things that made his character so great was that he wasn't infallible.
yeah.
He would get hurt, he would stumble, he would fall, things
Mm,
like he would make mistakes. But through all of that, he got back up and kept at it
kept
until
going.
he got to where he wanted to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's how you start doing the first, the first camping trips. You start making a shelter, starting fires, and reading magazines where you learn a bunch of these things. So yeah, I guess that's something. And at what point did it click for you to, okay, I want to do this like seriously. This is gonna be my job now. This is gonna be what I write about. This is gonna be what I want to. At this point, pass on the knowledge, or I mean, you never stop. As you know, this is a journey
Right.
for your entire life. But
Mm-hmm.
at what point did you make that click?
Well, I'd always been interested in writing. I'd always enjoyed writing.
Hmm.
I was the weird kid in school where I really was happy when it was an essay test,
Oh, okay.
because I knew that I'd be able to do well on that. Um, and I guess it was right around 99, 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. I started gravitating towards what at the time they were called Yahoo groups
Oh,
on,
okay.
on online, which I guess in a twisted way was kind of the predecessor to what we see as social media today,
Yeah.
where you would join these groups and you would have the post delivered to you by email.
All right.
You weren't necessarily going somewhere online to read everything; it would just filter to your inbox. And I noticed that there were several survival and preparedness groups, so I
Yeah.
joined a few of those just on a lark, just to kind of see what they were all about. And I really enjoyed interacting with people who were quite literally around the world,
Hmm.
you know, who had the same interests I did. And at the time, I was working as a private detective. That was my career, and I had some downtime in between going out to, do this or
Yeah.
that. So I would spend some of that time going through these posts in Yahoo groups and contributing where I could, the knowledge that I had at that point, some of the things that I had experienced, things like, that I wanted to share that I felt were relevant. And over the course of a couple of years, I got to know several people very well through these groups. And I had a few of them suggest, have you ever thought about writing a book? Have you ever thought about writing magazine articles? And I thought, well, yeah, let's pursue that. Let's see where that leads.
Mm.
And we had started a website. A few of us had started a website where I was reviewing survival books,
Okay.
prepper manuals, things like that. And I reached out to one of the authors of those books. Scott Williams was his name. He had written several books for Ulysses Press on bug out, bugging, that kind of thing. And I reached out to him and said, hey, I really like what you're doing. I'd like to maybe do the same thing.
Mm.
Do you have any pointers, any suggestions? And he, greatly encouraged me. He thought it was a wonderful idea. I had also made friends with several other authors outside of the prepper arena,
Mm.
mostly novelists. So I'd bounce ideas off of them as well. And I reached out to a handful of publishers and said, here's the book I want to write. Would you be interested? Here's my background, my knowledge level and all this. And Ulysses Press got back to me,
Mm-hmm.
said, we don't want to do this book that you're pitching us, but we really like your voice. We really like what you have to say. Let's see let's bounce some ideas around, see if we can settle on something else that we can pursue.
Right.
And over the course of a few months, we traded emails back and forth and ended up landing on what became my first book, Prepper's Home Defense.
Right.
And it just, again, it just kind of snowballed from there. Over the course of, I think, 7 years, I wrote 6 books for
Yeah, that's a
Ulysses
lot.
Press, something like that. They were just one after another after another. And at the same time, I started writing for some of the magazines
Mm.
in the prepper area, American Survival Guide, Survivor's Edge, um, eventually Knives Illustrated, EDC Magazine, things like that. And I was having a blast. It got to the point where I was putting in more time and earning more money doing the writing than I was working full time as a private detective.
Right. Right.
So for
Makes
me, it was a
sense.
no brainer,
Mm.
and I wasn't enjoying the detective work. I was very much enjoying the writing.
Mm.
So I hung up my badge and away we went.
The detective work. It's. I'm assuming it can get kind of intense at times, but also very boring at times. Would that be a correct assumption?
It's a lot more boring than
Mm.
anything else.
Waiting, right? And
Yeah. The analogy I give people is, if you want to see what it's like to go on a surveillance,
mm.
if you want to see what it's really like, get up on a Sunday morning about 6 a.m. and drive to the nearest shopping mall and pick a spot in the parking lot, park, and stare at the front door of that mall for 12 hours.
Yeah, super
Don't
exciting.
move. You can't leave. And then go home
Yeah,
and write a report about everything you saw.
man.
It's not that much fun.
Yeah, yeah. I assume it's gonna be. Yeah, I see how it could be pretty. So you're into knives as well. You enjoy
Oh,
you
yeah.
wrote for Blade. Blade was very
Well,
well.
I haven't written for Blade yet. I've written for Knives
Oh,
Illustrated.
okay, Knives Illustrated. All right.
Um, I've talked to the people at Blade. We just haven't connected really yet.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've been a knife guy since I was young.
Hmm.
Um, I just I like them. I think they're fun.
Yeah, yeah. I've always wanted. Well, I actually made my own knife. It's actually over there. That one.
Okay, okay.
Actually have the prototype right here. So I did this one for Aitor. Are you familiar with Aitor knives? Aitor blades?
No, no.
Yeah, it's gonna be some. This is the
All
prototype,
right.
actually. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, it was a fun project. I've known about them for a long time. The Spanish manufacturer. They made the jungle. You probably saw Jungle King knife. The Jungle King.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the original Jungle King, the one that has the hollow handle and has all
Uh-huh.
of this stuff, well, that is a legit survival knife that's been used for years in a few militaries around the world. And these are the guys. They make that. They make the bayonet for the Finland or Danish army. They make a bunch of bayonets as well. So I got them to do the knife I wanted. That was fun. That was a fun
Nice.
thing to do. Yes. Yeah, that was cool. So, is there any knife brand that you like or prefer, or knife style that you're more into?
Um, I really like Bark River knives.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like Spartan blades, Dan Taupe, Night Watch knives. Um, Buck knives aren't bad at all.
Hmm.
I've been to their factory. I've toured their factory
Ooh,
and
that
sat
must be
down talking.
nice.
Yeah, it's a huge operation they've got there.
Yeah.
A lot larger than you would think, you know. And it's funny. I My brother-in-law is not at all a knife guy, and I don't hold that against him. But we've had conversations about knives and knife selection and things like that. And I mentioned to him that, I'd been out to Buck Knives and, they're doing hundreds of thousands of blades a year and all this. And he just stopped and he looked at me and says, "Are there that many people buying knives?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a huge industry. It's a lot larger than you might think."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, the distributor that I normally go through is DLT Trading, and they're located in Marinette, Wisconsin. I've been to their store numerous times. I've toured their warehouse. Their warehouse, going back to Indiana Jones,
Yeah,
the very end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they're wheeling the Ark into that warehouse and it just seems endless.
yeah.
That's the DLT warehouse filled with knives.
Really,
It's
it's
really
enormous.
cool.
It's that big. Wow,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's
Um,
crazy. So it's
but
enormous.
yeah, White River Knives is another one I really like. I've been to their facility, talked to them. Um, there's a lot of it's really really great knife makers out there.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of knives sold, as you just said. Not so many knives used. And I'll be
Right.
the first one to raise my. I use a handful of them, like a couple. I
Hmm.
mean, that one that I have right here. It's actually here because it's something I use because it's a prototype and I've been using it for a long
Hmm.
time. But then I have that one which I did myself. So of course, then I have the Glock knife that I use for anything that I want to get dirty and just
Yep.
from mixing paint to just scrapping rust or whatever,
Hmm.
and a little halter force. And those are maybe the three knives I use the most. But then I have
Yep.
hundreds of knives that I never even touch.
Hmm. Yeah, I have way more knives than any human being would ever need in
Of
10 lifetimes,
course, of
you know,
course.
but they're fun to collect,
Yeah, yeah, so much.
and I, I came up, there's a mathematical formula that dictates how many knives you should own. It's
Really.
X plus one. X is the number you currently have.
It is so true. You never stop buying. I
No.
will admit I'm getting into a point where I'm not really all that. I mean, the market is so saturated that it's something that is very catchy or sexy looking knife or.
Hmm.
But then if not, if it's yet one more epoxy painted knife that I see, I don't know if I'm going for it. It has to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. You get a little bit more exquisite or more picky as years go
Hmm.
by, right?
Yep.
With your
Yep.
taste.
Well, here's a prime example. One of my all-time favorite brands and makers is Vehement Knives.
Mm,
Matt Martin is a true artist when it comes to
yeah.
making blades. And he's one of these custom makers where you get on the books with an order years in
Like
advance.
Randall, something like that. It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And with him, I placed an order with him like 2 years prior. And
mm.
over the course of that 2 years, I changed my mind a couple of times
Ooh.
on which knife I wanted him to make. And I settled on, believe it or not, a kitchen knife. He had
Really?
made his wife a custom utility knife for the kitchen. His wife is a phenomenal cook, in
Mm.
addition to being a genius when it comes to leather work.
Wow.
She does, uh, her business is Skin Bender Leatherworks. They do all of my custom leather. And he had made her this custom utility knife for the kitchen. And she showed a picture of it on Facebook one day. And I was like, that's what I want.
What is it?
Right.
What kind of kitchen knife is it? Any
It's
parry
just,
knife or?
yeah, it all told, it's maybe 9 inches long or
Mm,
so. It's got like a 4.5 inch blade. Um, it's got a real nice shape to it. It handles beautifully.
yeah.
It's razor sharp, and it holds the edge for a really long time as well. I mean, I've had it for several months. I use it all the time. I haven't had to touch up the edge yet.
What steel is it?
I think it's CPM 154.
Yeah,
I'd have to
okay.
look again to make sure.
Right.
But now, granted, I'm not. This isn't a knife that I take out and abuse. You know,
Mm.
I'm not taking it out in the woods and pounding it through
Right,
tree
right.
stump.
Yeah, sure.
I'm using it to cut up chicken and
Preparing
vegetables
food,
and
yeah.
things like
Mm.
that. And it's one of these knives where when I'm done with it, I wash it very carefully. I dry it off really
Yeah.
nice, and it goes back in the box and on a shelf. And I'm the only human being in the house who's
Allowed.
allowed to use that particular knife.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a good steel that should hold edge quite
Yep.
nicely, especially if it was heat treated like a little bit or on the harder edge. Because that's the other
Mhm.
thing, especially with survival knives. You have, and there's the marketing thing, and there's the actual. I mean, truth be told, 420 stainless steel, high carbon. Like Buck uses that, right? Buck
Yeah.
uses 420
Yep.
420 HC. Very
Yep.
well
Yep.
heat treated. It's a great steel,
Hmm.
man. You don't have to buy L Max fancy. Some of the
I have
cheaper knives are
said
super tough.
I've said countless times that the vast majority of knife users
Mm.
could not tell you the steel of their knife if it wasn't stamped on the
Oh,
end of the
there's
blade.
no way. It's impossible.
They have they might be able to tell you if it's high carbon or
Yeah,
stainless,
yeah.
but beyond that, they don't have a clue.
No
You know,
way.
and that's not meant to be a knock against them.
No, no,
It's
no.
just that there are so many subtle differences
Yeah,
between these different steels that, as a practical matter, it doesn't really matter a whole lot.
no, no.
You
Of
know what I
course not.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, there's good steel, there's bad steel, but there's a whole lot of very acceptable stuff
Mm.
that'll hold
Yeah.
up just fine.
Yeah, and there's a reason why it like 1095 has been used forever.
Hmm.
420, 440, basic stainless. Well, 440 is not and the thing is, as time goes by, we get like more picky and more. The fanciest super steel needs to come. That is, it can be used an X amount of times more than this other one, and before you have to
Right.
sharpen it again. But especially for what we do in terms of preparedness, you want something that is mostly tough and that will take a
Hmm.
beating, rather
Right.
than it can cut. And you have the different Katra tests, how many how many pieces of cardboard it cuts before you need to. Dude, it doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it makes sense for people that want that specifically, and you have to respect that. But no, for anything practical, okay, with a Tramontina machete will probably do
Hmm.
just as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about firearms? Are you into firearms as well? Is it something you're?
I'm much more into blades than I am firearms.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I think part of that is because growing up,
Hmm.
where we lived, um, firearms were accepted. A
Yeah.
lot of people had them, but I didn't have a lot of personal interaction with them.
Mm-hmm.
My dad wasn't a shooter. My mom wasn't a shooter. I didn't have anybody in my immediate circle who
Right.
was really into firearms. So while I was highly interested in them, I just didn't get the practical experience.
Hmm.
Blades, on the other hand, everybody had knives. We all carried knives. We all had the Buck 110 folder,
Right.
things like that. And so that's kind of how I grew up. I I'm familiar with firearms. I like using them,
Hmm.
but I'm nowhere near as into them as
Yeah.
I am blades and other things.
Yeah. Yeah. What is like in your idea of a survival knife? What's kind of like what model would you do you favor as something that you have like I'm buoy shape 9-10 inch blade, more of that sort of thing, or a smaller blade, or
Um, Couple of different things. Number one, I'm really a fan of pocket carry fixed
oh,
blade.
okay.
Okay, something that it's got like a 3 or 4 inch blade on it. It's long enough to do just about any utility
Yeah.
chore that you would need a knife for without having to have this big thing hanging off your hip. You
Correct.
slip it in the pocket, things like that. So for me, like the Grunt 2.0 from Vehement Knives, um, the Huntsman from Edge Knife Works. They're all,
Yeah.
maybe 7-inch overall.
Hmm.
They fit perfect into my utility pocket on my pants, and they do everything I need it to do. Now, if I need to go up to something a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, I don't have a problem going like, and it's kind of a ridiculous choice, but the El Shetty from Tops Knives, that one's just fun to go out and destroy things with.
Yeah.
Just an old machete will
Yeah.
do a lot of work.
Yeah, true.
The cold steel kukri. I gave my father-in-law one of those about 15 years ago because he does a lot of building trails in his woods. Okay. And he didn't really have a big heavy blade. So I got him, and it was like $25. I mean, it was
Yeah,
cheap.
the machete kukri. I have one of those in my car, I think.
And I'm telling you, he's been using it constantly for 15 years, and this thing is still held up. The only drawback to it is the handle's like a hard rubber.
Yeah.
And it's not
the nicest material, fanciest material there is, but it works. And it's never going to break. It's 1055 carbon steel that takes an edge. You can sharpen it easy enough. There's enough steel, and it's thin enough that it can actually wield. Because one of the, again, on the marketing thing is you have to make it a 1/4 of an inch thick. And I've seen some big knives that it is so damn heavy you cannot even wield that thing as a machete.
Yep.
So
I'm not a fan of the sharpened pry bar. That a lot of the manufacturers do. I like the pocket carry fixed blades. I like folders to a point. Swiss Army knife, you can't go wrong with a Victorinox Swiss Army knife. The Buck 110, I mentioned that one before. Kershaw's got some really great folders out there. In the last few years, I started gravitating towards automatic knives.
Ooh, nice. The OTF's ones or something like that?
Both. OTF and out the side. And part of that is also a hallmark to my youth, because growing up, switchblades in where I lived were illegal. You
really?
They were totally.
I had one in my pocket growing up as a kid, and it would open automatically, and I didn't even care, man. Getting poked with it was so cool that it was still. I'll still carry it with me.
and that's the thing. I mean, growing up, you knew like somebody's older brother had one that they had bought, at a flea market or something like that, and that was the only exposure you had to one. Now they're legal, so I've been buying the hell out of them.
Right.
Kershaw has an outstanding line of automatic knives, their launch series. I own several different models through their launch series. Really well made. They hold up great. Their live wire is an OTF. That's one of my daily carry knives, that's in constant rotation. They're just a lot of fun. I went and bought the Buck 110 Auto that they came out with strictly for nostalgia.
Right.
Because as a kid, we always heard these stories that, there were kits that you could buy to modify your buck knife and turn it into a switchblade. Nobody had ever seen it.
But it existed.
In theory. It's always a friend of a friend knew about this. So when Buck came out with the automatic, I had to get one, and it's not the most practical knife necessarily, but it's just so much fun.
Yeah, and the sound it makes, the feeling of it's there's something about it. So I had one of those cheap, of course, Chinese version of something, but it still was a blade that when you pushed the button, the thing came out of the front, and that was awesome. I had also one of those Italian styles that has like a little ball that you and it opens on the side automatically, and you bring down the guard and you close it back again. So I've had both. That one, the Italian style that I had, that was very nice blade and was very sharp and very pointy. I think it was much better than the OTF that I had. But as we were talking before, it's the childhood thing of you've seen it in movies and you want to have it as well.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. What's your just EDC for you? So I assume it's going to be a small fixed blade. Or a pocket, or what would be your typical EDC thing you grab?
typically I'm grabbing either the Kershaw Livewire, or which is, as I mentioned, that's an OTF auto. Um, let's see, the Grunt 2.0 from Vehement, the Huntsman from Edge Knife Works, the Field Scalpel from Dan Taupe. For other folders, like I'm just started carrying an old, not an old, it's a new model, a slip joint folder from White River Knives called the Trapper Trail something.
Hmm.
And it bothers me that I can't remember the name of it, but they just came out with this one late last year. It's a collaboration they did with Smith and Sons Knives, and I started carrying that one because I have to review it. And that's the other part of this. I'm a knife reviewer.
Right.
That's one of the things that I do. I get paid to play with knives and review them, and tell people what I think about them. As a result, I don't get to carry my favorites.
Right. You're
all the
always
time.
changing to something else.
Exactly. I'm always testing something. I'm always carrying something new to me to see how it feels, things like that. So while the live wire or the Grunt are preferred for my daily carry, they're not typically
Always.
what I
Yeah.
grab. I'm grabbing whatever's new on the table that I need to,
Yeah.
turn in a review next month.
Correct. Right. In terms of a flashlight that you have, any little model of flashlight that you like having with you, or is that something not that you typically would
I
have?
always have a flashlight. Always have a pocket flashlight. It's 99% of the time it's something from Streamlight.
Right.
I own numerous Streamlight models. I've never had a problem with any of them.
Yeah.
I really like that brand a lot. I wasn't always a flashlight guy. I knew people who would carry flashlights, and I'm just like, that's ridiculous. Why do you always carry a flashlight? And then a buddy of mine convinced me. He says, just carry one for a week.
You'll use it. You'll use it.
And after the second day, I'm thinking, how did I live this long without carrying a flashlight with me?
Yeah, it's so true. So true.
I have one with me all the time.
It's one of the most common comments I get in my YouTube channel. Like, I started carrying this little Olight or whatever, and I'm using it all the time. Maybe even more so than pocket knives. For a lot of people, they don't even, I mean, for us, not having a pocket knife would be insane, but honestly, the flashlight, you end up using it quite a bit for one reason or another.
Yep.
Anything else that you carry with you, like besides your cell phone and wallet and keys and stuff like that?
I've toyed with the pocket pry bars a little bit, but in my daily life, I just don't use them enough to warrant carrying it in my pocket with me all the time. Yeah. I'll usually have one in an off-body, like little toolkit or something that I'll throw in my EDC pack. But generally, it's wallet, cell phone, knife, flashlight, maybe, it sounds silly, but like a lucky coin or something like that.
Ooh, I'm into that too. Your pocket piece? Yeah.
Yep. Pocket jewelry,
some
that
Morgan coin or something like that.
Yeah. But other than that, I don't carry a whole lot in my pocket. I'll usually have a lighter of some sort. I quit smoking years and years ago, but I still will typically carry a lighter with me. But I don't like being loaded down with a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And I know that flies in the face of a lot of hardcore survivalist types where, they do the pocket dump photo on Facebook, and they've got,
a lot of
7 different knives, and, it's like, how do you even walk with all that stuff?
I get it.
I keep very, just literally what I desperately need every day. That's what's on my body. Everything else goes into my EDC pack or bag, and I'll carry that with me, but I'm not going to be loaded down with all kinds of things hanging off my belt or in my pockets.
That's And there's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of people that will do the video of, like a backpack like the one I have over there. I carry this every single. Do you really? Do you really carry that around all day long? I'm a heavy pocket kind of guy. Yeah, I will have my like 511 shorts with a bunch of pockets. So I'll have a Leatherman, the Leatherman Charge multi-tool with me, some flashlight, and I will have a second folder. So that's 95% of the time. That's usually I'll have a folder, one CRKT M16 model on one hand, Leatherman Charge on the other pocket, and during a time I had a lighter with me. For years I EDC'd a lighter even though I don't smoke, but lately I don't know, man. I don't carry it. I do have a flashlight with me in my pocket, and if I have to narrow it down like a lot, I will have flashlight and the Leatherman because it has a blade. So with the Leatherman, I'm okay.
Yeah.
If I have to go,
nothing wrong with that. And that's one of the things that I find fun about the whole EDC and preparedness thing is experimenting to find what works best for you.
Yeah, totally.
There are a lot of people who get very adamant that you have to carry this, and this.
Yes.
And you know what? There is no one size fits all solution to any of this.
And then you change. Your life changes. Your needs are not the same. Your environment is not the same. Hell, if you move around a little bit, if you live in colder weather, warmer weather, safer places, and whatnot, do I need this? Honestly, no, not anymore. Right. I don't need to have this with me all day. So, yeah. I mean, I think that you always should have pocket knife of some kind and a flashlight of some kind, right? And if you have something to start a fire, even better. But those would be the things that in fact, I kind of go, I have it right here, like with my keys, right? In my keys, little Victorinox, little flashlight. And you mentioned the pry bar, so little Pico pry bar here too.
Sure.
And that's, at least I have something with me if I don't have anything else,
Well, and for me, here's a great example of what works best for you compared to me. For years and years, when I worked as a private detective, I'm in and out of courthouses all day long.
Right.
I can't carry a pocket knife or, some of these other things into the courthouse. So I would never put those things on my key ring, because I need my keys to get in and out of my vehicle, and I wouldn't want to have to take it off my key ring all the time. So I made sure that anything that I was carrying that couldn't go into the courthouse wasn't attached to me. It was just loose in my pocket that I could just take it out, put it in my cup holder in my car, go into the courthouse, and then put the thing back in my pocket when I came back out. You only make that mistake once. If you go into a courthouse with something you're not supposed to have,
someone's going to look at it.
You will remember it from that point forward.
Yeah. Well, lately it's been like in museums, in places like they don't let you have. It's weird. In some museums I've been, they don't let you have a flashlight with you because some of them that have a laser, there's always going to be that asshole that does something stupid. And the guy was, no, we've had the case that someone comes with a very powerful laser that looks exactly like a flashlight, and he burns a invaluable painting. And it's unfortunate, but that's what we have these days. Man, what pocket piece of coins do you like carrying? Is there anything that you favor mostly? I have to ask because I'm a little bit of a silver coin guy myself.
Well, I've got a couple of custom pieces from Ghost Town. I got to think of how he does it's Ghost Town Customs. Huckleberry is his name. One of his things he does is he customizes buck knives all the time. Right. But then he also does custom coins,
rounds and stuff like
other engravings and stuff like that. I've got a piece on the way from him right now, a brass custom coin that I'm looking forward to. But I've got a couple of his pieces that I'll swap around. I've got this, it's not a coin, but if you follow me on Facebook, those of you who do, you'll see my wife and I go hiking all the time,
Yeah.
and we each have these little tchotchkes that we carry that we take photos of on our hikes. And mine is it's a cast skull with a crown, wearing a crown. It's actually the mascot or emblem for Vehement Knives. It's called the Dead King Louis. Okay,
Okay.
and there's a few dozen or more of these things floating around the world. They were all created by Mad Art Studios, and I often will have that in my pocket. It's hollow, so you can use it. I don't use it this way, but you could use it as a lanyard bead on a knife or
Hmm.
something like that. I mean, it's big, it's about that big around,
Yeah.
but that's one of the things I carry most commonly, and we'll take photos of that, everywhere we go, and, post those on Facebook from time to time. Um, I had the same studio. I commissioned them to create a little piece for my wife based on a little logo she had come up with years ago. And, they're just fun.
Yeah.
They're fun to just carry and take
Hmm.
photos of and that kind of thing. Um, I do have a silver dollar that I've carried off and on for years. I've got an actual silver ingot that was cast by a friend of mine. I'll carry that from time to time. It varies. I change it up.
Hmm.
It's never anything consistent. That's part of the fun of having a
Yeah.
little collection like that is, going through and what do I want to carry today, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally get it. Yeah, so I started buying a little bit of silver, and then got into a little bit more of the older coins and the
Hmm.
Liberties and the Morgans um, and the whatnot, and also some of the rounds. There's one that you probably will like, the Corsair. That's a Corsair. No, the Privateer. That's a deep relief 2 ounce coin. That I
Okay.
mean, it is beautiful. I'll post it somewhere there in Facebook, maybe later. But if you look at it, it's the Privateer 2 ounce coin, deep relief from a while back.
Okay.
That's a very nice looking skull and bone kind of
Nice.
piratey. Yeah,
Hmm.
nice coin. Hey, let's go into preparedness as of what are you? Is there anything that you're looking at now that you're concerned? What's your professional opinion on where we are right now in the world, what's happening, and what's concerning you, or maybe not concerning you, or how do you see the world as of today? Where are we going?
I uh I think the world's a dumpster fire
Yeah.
recently. And there's a whole lot of reasons for it.
Mm.
There some of them may be more realistic than others.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, particularly here in the United States,
Yeah.
we're very divided.
Yeah. That's
You know,
crazy. Yeah.
we're we're very conflicted as a country, as a society,
Mhm.
and it's it feels very dangerous. Whether it really is or not, I
Mm.
don't know. But that's the feeling that a lot of people have, is that, it's like it's a powder keg just waiting for that match.
Yeah.
You know, um, there's there's a day of protest coming up,
Mm.
April 5th, I think it is, where tens of thousands of people are going to flood the streets to
Yeah.
protest
Yeah.
things that are going on that they don't agree with. And as a practical matter,
Mm.
my advice to people is, I don't care if you agree or disagree with those
Mm.
people. I would not go out that day.
Don't
I
get
would stay home,
involved. Yeah, of course.
just avoid that risk
Mm.
completely, you know. Um, whether it's going to amount to anything, who knows, you know.
Yeah.
But as an educator, as somebody who people turn to for advice on such matters, my advice is always, avoid the risk whenever possible.
Yeah.
You know, there's no sense exposing yourself and your family to it if you don't have to,
Mm.
and that goes for, these protests, it goes for everything. You know, I strive for a very boring life.
Yes. Yes.
Boring is good,
Yeah.
and I think that's the ideal for a lot of people,
Mm.
is yeah, it's fun to get worked up and excited about this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, I want to just kick back, read a book, watch TV, hang out with my granddaughter, and
Yeah.
enjoy my life. I don't want the drama. I don't want the excitement.
Hmm.
You know, I'm not 20 anymore. When
Yeah.
I was 20, yeah, that kind of stuff was fun. I'm in my 50s.
Hmm.
I get tired.
Tired of all bullshit.
you know, um, and the flip side of it is, I've been in this prepping thing for almost 40 years.
Hmm.
I have survived, at last count, about 122 predicted ends of the world.
Ooh,
You
how many
know,
times
I
has the
mean,
end of the world been predicted? It's like every 5 years. The end of the
mhm,
world is the end. I think it's worse than the end of the world. This is gonna be the world we have. This is gonna be.
yeah, yeah. Well, and going back to the Yahoo groups for a
Mm,
minute, there was a guy who ran a very large survival and preparedness Yahoo group.
yeah.
Every year,
He predicted the end
come
of the
January or
world.
February, every year he predicted that October was going to be the end.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
then October would come and go
And
and
nothing would
nothing would
happen.
happen.
Yeah.
And come January, it'd start all over again.
And there would
You
be a
know,
bunch
and
of people that believe him no matter
yeah,
what. The following
yeah.
year, the same
And
bullshit.
I would call him out on it every year. I'd say, "Hey, dude, we're all still here. What happened?" And
Oh
he would
man.
just ignore it. He wouldn't even acknowledge it, and he would just start his
Yeah.
predictions anew.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of stuff drives me up a wall.
Hmm.
Again, as somebody who works in this industry as a professional,
Yeah.
I can't stand scare tactics. I
Doom and
can't
gloom
stand,
and the end
yeah,
of the world
all that.
is
Yeah,
it's so
it's just,
stupid.
just, let's talk about ways that we can be prepared
Yeah.
without having to worry about scaring the hell out of
Hmm.
everybody to do it.
Yeah.
If they're viewing your channel, they're reading your book, they're reading your magazine,
Hmm.
they're already interested.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
have to convince them,
No,
you know?
absolutely. And besides, what I mean, man, many of the things for one of the things that honestly I'm really like, I don't very much like you. I just want to be with my wife, my kids, and as you said, boring is good. I don't need to go
Yeah.
into any drama or. And I never, all of the peak oil, there's not going to be any more gas next year.
Hmm.
All that bullshit. And there's been, and as you well know, there's been people doing this forever. There was this guy. This guy was in Johnny Carlson's show in the United States like 20 times, always about overpopulation. The guy
Yeah.
wrote a book about it in the 70s and in the 80s. And in the 80s, everything's going to blow up because of overpopulation. And the guy,
Hmm.
proven wrong, in the 90s, he was still running the same crap. And then he gets invited into the UN to do something about overpopulation. Honestly,
Hmm.
like Elon Musk said, the problem is not overpopulation. We will run out of people in this world because no one wants to start a family. No one wants to have kids. People are more alone now than ever. This is really, I mean, if you want to get really worked up and concerned, that is honestly something maybe I won't see, but my kids will see it. We
Hmm.
will see the problem of an aging population, a problem with people that don't know what to do with their lives, man.
Yeah.
They don't want
Yeah.
to, men don't want to be men, women don't want to be women, and don't get me I get worked up. I get pissed with all of this stuff, but that is cause for concern, I think. Not much you can do about it, but what do you think about it? Am I overreacting? Am I being crazy, or what's your thought on that sort of stuff?
I don't know. I mean, it's easy to get worked up about things
Yeah, yeah,
when you're not necessarily seeing the full picture, the full
mm,
reality. And that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, in our society today
yeah,
is we're inundated with news
yeah.
24/7,
Bombarded,
but
yes.
it's not quality news.
No,
It's junk
garbage.
food
Mm,
news. It's Twinkie news.
mm.
It's garbage.
And scare
You know,
sells. Scaring people sells, and drama sells,
yep.
and the clicks matter, and eyeballs on the news matter, and screen. The another thing that they've worked down to a science is engagement. How can I get
Hmm.
your eyeballs stuck on this thing for X amount of seconds. What
Right.
I know gets you, and we're all in these echo chambers. And going back to what you were saying about polarization in society, and it is wild that in the United States, the same people that are now attacking other folks for driving a Tesla were the same people that were buying it themselves months ago.
Well, and the reverse is also true on that.
Yeah.
The same people who were just screaming to the sky that the powers that be were going to force everybody into electric cars
Are buying it.
are now, where can I buy one?
Yeah.
You
Just
know?
to piss off the other one, the other guy that now.
Exactly. Like you're talking about with engagement in these echo chambers,
Yeah.
what a lot of people I think overlook or maybe don't realize is every single media source has a bias.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
And
Is.
every media source is playing to their audience because they don't want to lose those viewers. They don't want to lose those readers. They don't want to lose those clicks.
Yeah.
So they're going to present everything to their audience in such a way that's going to please them.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, we've seen this countless times with news stories and things like that, where, if you go to a news story on this side of the aisle and you go to a news story on this side of the aisle, they're covering the same event, but it reads totally different.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they know how to play to their audience. And we kind of fall into this trap where we really like what, this website says.
Yeah.
We're going to keep going to that website. We're going to keep feeding off of that information without realizing that they're twisting the story with a certain perspective that might not be 100% accurate. And it doesn't matter which political side you're talking about. They all do it.
Yeah, and it's so polarized, and the more polarized you are, the more attention you get, and the more people you get, and it used to be not that long ago. I know that's going to be something you agree with me, which is back in the day, a family would sit down, and in the case of the United States, it would be someone voted Democrat, someone voted Republican. It wasn't that big of a deal. Now it's like, dear God, I'm never talking to you again, you demon monster. Go back to North Korea or wherever.
Hey, I grew up in a family where my dad was conservative.
Yeah.
My dad was a Republican. Mom was a Democrat. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And even back then, in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't as polarizing, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they had wildly different opinions about certain things, but they agreed with each other on a whole lot more than they disagreed.
On the important stuff, right?
Right. And nowadays, it almost feels like, okay, in the United States, when you meet somebody new, okay, and I'm saying the United States because I don't know if this is the same in other cultures, but here, when you meet somebody new, the very first question you ask when, they say, hi, my name's Jim. The first question, what do you do for a living?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
For years and years and years, that was the most common thing. Today, I feel like the first question is, who did you vote for?
Yeah.
And that informs everything that happens afterwards in that conversation.
Yeah.
And it's disheartening to me.
Yeah.
To see so many people get so worked up and divided when they probably agree on a whole lot more than they would disagree about if they would just listen to one another. I've said for decades, 99% of the problems our society faces right now would disappear in a heartbeat if people would just treat each other like human beings.
Yeah, so true. So true.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. And the ability to agree, the saying of to agree to disagree, it used to be true. It used to be, okay, you have a different view, or I get it that we're never gonna see eye to eye on this thing, but we agree on all of the other stuff. But now it's like, what what did you do? Screw you! There's a video I want to upload now. It's the guy is driving his Cybertruck with a MAGA hat, right? And there's a bunch of people insulting him like complete lunatics, and the guy is just feeding on it. And you're both wrong. What are you doing there? Why do you like being insulted at? Why are the other people, screaming at? everyone is wrong in that. Why are you even engaging on that thing? There's nothing good about that. And as you said, the most green I'll ever be is driving gasoline instead of diesel. That's as far as I will go with electric cars, but it's crazy. As you were saying before, people that would have never been caught dead on an electric car, now it's gonna be just to make a point.
Everything is about, and on both sides, everything is about getting the win. Getting one over on the other side, when really the focus should be on, okay, how can we get everybody
on the same page? Or on the same page, or as close to a consensus on the things that are important. There's a meme, going back to the Facebook thing. There was a meme. You probably saw it. It was like, it was showing like the Republicans and the Democrats, and there was, well, these guys do this, and this. And what about, well, these are do the exact same thing, but say they are the opposite, right? At the end of the day. And that is a little bit discouraging when you see that the same things, the serious, the people that run everything, now I'm getting a little bit more conspiracy theory here, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's unfortunately so, and you see where this thing they don't touch, where there's the really big money or the very serious interest, those things are always protected. Those, it is like, and both parties agree on it. And everywhere in the world is the same thing. It's not exclusive to the United States. I'm a little bit disenchanted with politicians in general, because no matter where you look, you never mess with the business, the money, the interest, the people that finance politicians to get there in the first place, Well,
a friend of mine years ago, I think he said it best when he said that, the right wing and left wing, they're like two cheeks on the same ass.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way of putting it.
I was just talking to my wife about it the other night, and I told her, if everybody held all politicians to the same standards,
no one survives.
You can't excuse behavior from the guy you like and then castigate this guy for doing the same thing just because he's not wearing the same color you like,
Right.
And again, it's on both sides. We see it all the time, and it's maddening and depressing at the same time.
Yeah, it happens to me. I have a Spanish channel. I have a Spanish YouTube channel. I write in Spanish as well. And in my country, in Argentina, they have Javier Milei, which is, by the way, like very close friends with Trump. I don't know if Trump has many president friends around the world, but that's the guy that he's like, my friend Donald, and they're like super close, right? And the guy has been doing some awesome things in terms of cutting waste government spending that should never be there. And then he messes up with other things, and it is so, as you were saying, it's a little bit depressing when if you point out something that it's going right and it's done well. Oh, you asshole! So you're with that fascist and that dictator and that. And then if you criticize, like, what, he screwed up with this. He had this thing where he was involved with promoting a meme coin where a lot of people lost a lot of money, and really it looked very bad. I mean, the guy made a tweet about a Libra coin, and a lot of people that were these, like, again, going back to this thing of following the cult leader as if he's some revelation that comes out of the sky. They put a lot of money in it, and they lost everything because, of course, it's a meme coin. You're going to lose money. What were you thinking? And then they're, I trusted him, and he did this. Well, be an adult, have some responsibility, and just because the guy you voted for is saying something, have your own critical thinking.
Yep.
It's very difficult to achieve that level of maturity for a lot of people, apparently.
I agree.
Yeah. I don't know. It's great to talk with you finally. And is there anything what would be like for someone that's getting now into preparedness, watching this, which would be like a couple pointers, a couple things to, first of all, go buy Jim's books. You will have the links there below. But but what would be like a couple, 2 or 3 different things that would tell someone that, hey, you know what, I am thinking of getting prepared. I see things that, maybe, not so great coming in the future. Which would be the things that you would tell someone?
Generally speaking, there are 3 what I consider to be universal priorities. Okay,
Yeah.
and for some people, these will be non-issues because they're already there. But
Hmm.
if you're not, number one, physical fitness.
Yeah.
Okay, getting yourself in better shape. You don't have to be an Olympian athlete,
Oh, yeah.
but we all have limitations. We all have struggles.
Hmm.
Work around them as best you can and improve your health as well as you can.
Hmm.
Improve your diet. If your main form of exercise is jumping to conclusions, maybe you should get off the couch a little bit.
Yeah.
And I am far from being
An
in perfect
athlete of
shape.
Olympic level, yes.
You
But,
know, um, so work on physical fitness.
yeah.
Number 2, financial preparedness.
Yeah.
Get your financial house in order, get out of debt, start a savings plan, things like that. Um, it's something that's very often overlooked in the prepper
Yeah.
world. I think because there's always this doomer mentality of,
Oh, yeah.
I don't need to save for retirement because the world's going to end before then and the dollar's going to collapse and all this.
Have you ever had anyone telling you that he's going to go into debt so as to buy preps? I've had that
Oh,
happen
yeah.
more than once.
I've had people tell me flat out that they cashed in all of their retirement accounts and went out and bought food and water and things like that
Yeah.
because they're convinced that the end of the world is right around the corner.
Yeah.
I don't recommend doing that. Hedge your bets
Yeah.
because if the world doesn't end next year, guess what? You're still going to need that retirement money.
Yeah.
Um, and then the third one is water.
Yeah.
It's just simple water. Nobody has ever come out the other end of a disaster upset that they had too much clean water available to them.
Yeah.
It's simple, it's easy, it's cheap, and it's one of the most important things. I mean, it's a life critical,
Yes. Yes.
you have to have water. I'm not suggesting you go out and buy, 10 giant
Hmm.
containers to fill up your backyard, but do a little bit every week.
Yeah.
Put a little bit aside, set up rain catchment systems if you can,
Hmm.
things like that, and store water and store the means to filter and purify additional water.
Yeah. Yeah, those are actually great tips. And water, because people think that if you don't have food, like there's people that honestly think that you die if you don't eat for a couple days, which blows my
Yeah.
mind. But there's people that
Mm-hmm.
think that they have no idea how mankind has been surviving at times, well, not having anything to eat all week, or maybe just grabbing
Mm-hmm.
something here and there and little else.
Yep. Yep.
Many of the things that all the festivals and all of these things that after the end of a harvest and eating a lot, that was getting ready for when there's less of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But water is critical, and the thing about water is, unlike food, if you don't eat for a day, you're not gonna be super happy. But after a couple days of not eating, your body is not gonna ask for anything that you obviously cannot get immediately. Now, water
Right.
is not the same thing. Water, you
No.
will, in Chile, when they had that big earthquake, people were desperate within hours for water and getting
Mm-hmm.
very violent over it. That's
Yep.
crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what about the mental aspect and mental aspect, but mental health aspect of
Yeah.
all of this?
It's very important. Self-care is such kind of a new agey term
Yeah.
still to this day, but it's very important. You got to take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
You need to get yourself, for example, unplug from social media once in a while.
Totally.
Just get
Yes.
away from it. Go for a walk outside. Um, One of the top ways to help yourself feel better is to hug your dog.
Yeah.
Just sit on the couch, hug your dog, and put in a mindless movie,
Yeah.
something that one of your favorites. You've got to get yourself into a healthy headspace, and if you're not there, that's a priority.
Hmm.
You're not going to make good, sound decisions if you're not there.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to, there's a crisis, there's a disaster, things like that. Take a deep breath. Understand that you have successfully survived every single crisis you've faced in your life thus far.
Yeah.
So the odds are in your favor that you're going to come through with this one as well.
Yeah.
It might not be fun. It might not be, a great time, but think of the stories you can tell your grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Yes, yeah, keep a level head. And you mentioned going for walks and hikes with your wife. I do that myself too. You know, we try to go. Unfortunately, if I'm like too caught up on going insane here on YouTube and just getting, as you were saying, I just get bombarded. With bad information, and honestly, there's bad things happening. It's not as if it's not happening, and especially these days, the world is pretty wild. But you're not going to fix anything. You're not going to change much at all. So you might as well go for a walk with your wife and count your blessings. Thank God that you actually, that's also something else that people, because of what we were just talking about, people not having problems with forming relationships, getting together, having people in their lives. Again, part of it's planned, but you have to be more tolerant yourself. If you want something exactly like you, I mean, you would end up with a guy that collects a bunch of knives and guns.
Right. Yep. You have to be more tolerant. You have to be willing to
compromise.
Yeah.
Marriage is that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've been married my wife and I have been together since 91. So, we're coming up on 34 years. And
Nice.
of that time, we've been married almost 30. And compromise is important. The most critical, important phrase you need to learn and understand isn't "I love you," and it isn't "I'm sorry." It's "I understand."
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That will defuse so many arguments. Because let's face it, when we're upset and we're angry, we don't want somebody to apologize to us. We want somebody to understand where we're coming from. We want somebody to understand our perspective. When you say to your spouse, "I understand what you're saying," you're not necessarily agreeing with them, but you're validating that they're feeling a certain way. You understand why they're feeling that way, and you're willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's so important. It really is. My wife and I don't have a perfect marriage. Nobody does. The perfect marriage doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But we've been together a long damn time.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I've been married 25 years almost. If it's not there, it's going to be soon enough. And I am a little bit of the confrontational, and the thing I've learned is it doesn't matter. Oh, but I'm right. Who gives a damn if you're right? It doesn't matter. You're not. It's not about winning an argument, and it kind of comes back to this prepping thing of don't be in the fight in the first place. Try to put yourself in the other person's position. Understand that you're completely different in many things. Especially if you are with a woman instead of being with a big burly bearded dude that likes knives and guns and goes with you to a shooting range, which you probably don't want to be married to.
Right.
And as you say, I get it. I understand. I hear what you're saying. Let's try finding a solution to this. I don't want things to go wrong any more than you do. And not like, oh, but I'm so right and she's so wrong. And that's usually not going to be a good thing.
No, you're not going to get anywhere with that.
No. Hey, man, it's been over an hour. It's been awesome talking with you. It's been a lot of fun, and I guess we could do this for another hour. But I know that you are busy, so I'll leave the links for your books, for Facebook, for people to follow you over there.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for doing this. It's been great.
Well, thanks for inviting me. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad we were finally able to connect. We've known about each other for years. It's great to finally be able to chat.
Fantastic, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.